Shalom. Giving all praises to Yahweh Shem Shai, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and salutations and blessings to the hopeful members of the elect that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, teaching this word in sincerity and in truth, and those that believe on this word and help on this word in sincerity and in truth. Um, Also to the sisters that believe as well. Um, uh, this is going to be, I'm going to try to make it as short and sweet as possible. Try to get straight to the point through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemel Shai. This is a continuing series that brothers are doing, the apostles, dealing with the Gentiles versus Gentiles. And in this segment, I'm going to go into Acts 17 and uh, the book of Maccabees, and also I'm going to bring in a couple references um, that are akin to the scriptures that further explain the Hellenization of the Jews, and explains what nationality were the Greeks that the Bible is speaking about that salvation came to. So, Lord will, without further ado, I'm going to start off in the book of Acts, the 17th chapter, and I'm going to read the 10th verse. It says, "And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea." Now, this is after they left Thessalonica, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so. Therefore many of them believed, also of honorable women which were Greeks, and of men not a few. So in this church in Berea, however you want to pronounce it, there were Greeks in there, women and men, not a few of them. There was a lot of them, and they were known as the Greeks in the synagogue of the Jews. Now, were these so-called white women and white men? Now, if you looking at it face value without no understanding, you would think that, because let's look at where Berea is. You look here on this map, the church of Berea, right? This is Greece here. So Berea is here. Thessalonica, Philippi, Corinth. These are all Greek churches in Greek territory, right? But it said the synagogue of the Jews. So you had Jews up there that knew they were Jews, and you also had Greeks or Israelite foreigners that kept Greek customs, but their true nationality was Israelite, not Greek, but they were Hellenized, right? So let's go back. Now, I believe this word here I looked up in Acts 17. Let me refresh it real quick, because I've been having these pages saved a couple of days. Satan been trying to hinder me on doing this lesson. But anyway, let's go back. I think this is, yeah, exactly, yep. In the book of Acts 17 and 4, the word Greeks. I didn't read verse 4, but let's read it. It says, "And some of them believed and consorted with Paul and Silas, and the devout Greeks, a great multitude, and of the chief women not a few." Basically the same thing I read in Acts 17 and 11. Basically the same thing. And I believe this is when they were at the church of Thessalonica or Thessalonica. The word Greeks is there. So you had Greeks in the church of Thessalonica, You had Greeks in the church of Berea. You had Greeks in the Corinth church. But were these all Greeks? Were they Edomites, so-called white people? Let's look up this word Greeks. The word there is Helen. Now, blue letter goes off because they're trying to stop this true understanding from going out as it has been. And I'm gonna read what blue letter says, and I got other references. It says a Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies, which that really don't give you much. In a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews. See, that's where they go off. That made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. Primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. But it said all nations, not Jews. But when you read the Bible, it's talking about nothing but the Jews that were Greeks. Let's go back. Let's go down here. A Greek by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. And that's what happened to a lot of Israelites. They were born in the land of Greece and they were raised up like like Timothy, his father. His father was a Greek. So obviously his parents were born there and they took on those customs of Greeks, just like us in America. Before we came to the knowledge, we were born here in America. We were given American names, African American names, and we were taking on the customs of this place. Same thing that happened with Peter. I mean, not Peter, Timothy, his father, and so on, and these Greeks that we're reading about. Now, here it says Strong's definition of Hellen, Grecian or inhabitant of Hellas, by extension, a Greek-speaking person, especially a non-Jew. See, they put that in there to throw you off, which that's wrong, because you had a lot of Israelites. That's why Paul spoke Greek. That's why when Yahushua was put on that cross, it was written on there in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, King of the Jews. It was written in the three languages, the prominent languages at that time, because Israel was speaking all three languages, whether they knew Hebrew or not. Paul knew all three. But see, show you here, blue letter goes off on the word. So what I did, I went here, Helen, in ancient Greek. Helen, a Greek of unknown origin. Don't give you much. Pertaining to Greece, Hellenic Greek. From Helen, a Greek of unknown origin. Earliest surviving use is by Homer in reference to a Thessalonian tribe, traditionally from the name of eponymous ancestor, Helen, son of which this don't give you nothing. This don't give you no understanding. Right? So what I did, I found this little paper online entitled Israel in the Hellenistic Age. And it says here, History and Literature of the Bible, the Hellenistic Age. And this is why the apostles push that we gotta, go into things, go into words, get our study on, because if you going by this, or if you go by the blue letter itself, you'll be confused, because it says especially a non-Jew. But what I'm gonna show you right here in this little paper, and also in this Jewish virtual library, is that indeed the Jews did speak Greek and they were Hellenized. But before I read this, I want to read this first here. Now, I'm gonna start. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm gonna just hit the juicy points. Start here. It says from 336 to 323 BCE, in only 13 years, he used this. He is talking about Alexander the so-called Great. He used the forces of the tiny nation of Macedonia to topple the world order to dominated the seemingly almighty Persian Empire, which had stretched from near India to the very borders of Greece. He managed to establish the most extensive empire the world had ever known, an empire stretching from Greece through what had been Egypt, Judea, Samaria, which is the northern part of Israel, Syria, Babylon, Persia, and Afghanistan, to reach which, that's all in that same region, to reach the western edge of India. He was relentless, stopping at nothing to get what he wanted. At the age of 32, however, he died unexpectedly in Babylon of a stomach disorder, right? Now, let's get into what he left behind. Hellenism and Hellenization. The new culture that emerged as a result of Alexander's conquest became known as Hellenism. The Greeks were called Hellenes. This new culture of blend of Greek education and emphasis of the arts with elements from the Oriental cultures which Alexander conquered would continue even unto the period after the Roman conquest of the Greek Empire. The Romans would continue to foster Greek culture in the areas of the Eastern Mediterranean under their control. Let's see. I just skipped that one. We're going to go there. This is it right here. This is where it gets into Bible, dealing with the Jews being Hellenized. Now, this is Hellenization B. It says the process of fostering the new Greek culture became known as Hellenization or Hellenized. Alexander and his successors employed several tactics designed to further the spread of Hellenism. They established Greek cities run under the democratic Greek model, and I'm going to read this in the scriptures later. Imposed the Greek language as the official language for government and the de facto language for commerce. So, in order for you to make money, you had to speak Greek. If you wanted to move product, you had to deal with the Greek language. Same thing in today's society. If you want to fly a plane, you better know how to speak English. If you want to open up a business in America, you got to know how to speak English. 3, they established Greek schools, gymnasia, to further the values of Greek culture and built Greek temples, stadiums, and theaters for the same purpose. In the years under Greek rule, the world of the Jew people would begin a process of change that would arguably be the most radical yet. The clear influence of the Greek values, architecture, commerce, and language can be seen beginning in this period, even in Judea. Many people began to give their children Greek names. Timothy, Timotheus, as an example. And local styles of art and architecture began to imitate Greek models. Even some of the Jew high priests took Greek names. Outside Judea, Greek would become the lingua franca of the Jew communities. And the Septuagint translation of the Bible will be produced perhaps as early as 250 BCE to meet the needs of those communities. Right? In time, it was only natural that the pressure to conform to Greek values and the changing nature of the Jew society would come into direct conflict with Judaism. The faith of the Jew people, I don't like to say Jewish, that's why I'm saying Jew, because it's talking about the real Jews, not the fake ones. The faith of the Jew people, rebellion against the powerful Greeks, though, would be out of the question for a very long time. Now this part goes into what I'm gonna bring out in the scriptures. It says, and just bear with me and read, if you got the attention span, this is good information through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shah. It says, introduction, the rise of the Seleucid and Ptolemaic kingdoms. When Alexander died, his empire was divided among his 5 generals, which really it was 4. Of these, 2 will concern us. Ptolemy gained control of Egypt, most of what would later be called Palestine and the Mediterranean Sea. He established a Ptolemaic dynasty. Seleucus got Syria and most of the northern half of the Alexander's empire and established the Seleucid dynasty. In 198 BC, the Seleucid ruler Antiochus of Syria took the Jew kingdom away from the Ptolemies because he went to make war with his own brother, which they were of the same nation, right? And the decisive moment of that was the Battle of Panias. Now, let's go down here and just going to read a little more, and then we're going to jump right back into the scripts. It says, under the Ptolemies, the people of Israel had enjoyed relative peace. They were allowed to practice their religion without much interference. Under the Seleucids, this same policy of tolerance was maintained at first, but under Antiochus IV, things began to change. Now, you had under the Ptolemies, Israel was allowed to actually keep their own customs, but you had Israelites that actually adopted the Greek way, not being forced to. Now it's going into Antiochus, the forced persecution of the Jews, and we're going to read this right out of the scriptures. Antiochus the Fourth, or he's better known as Antiochus the Great, who called himself Epiphanes, which means God manifests, which is right, took power in 175 BCE, 30 years after the Seleucid conquest of what would later be known as Palestine. He had ambitions of the reestablishing Alexander's empire under his own rule and had little regard for the religion of the Jew people. Antiochus upset the line of succession of the high priest by anointing Joshua, who then took the Greek name Jason. And you can read that in the Apocrypha, in place of his brother Onias for a bride, then deposing Jason, appointing Menelaus, again notice the Greek name for a bigger bride. This sequence of events brought to an end the old Zadokite line of high priests, or the Zadok. Let's see. I'm gonna jump. Okay, here it is. Here, on his way back through Israel. This was on his way back after he conquered Egypt. Took it from the Ptolemy. It says, on his way back through Israel, he desecrated the temple in Jerusalem, sacrificing pigs on the altar. He set up an altar to Zeus, which the abomination would make it desolate. That's what that was. And prohibited the Sabbath observance, circumcision, reading of the Torah, and celebration of religious festivals. In short, he outlawed Judaism, or the Jews' culture. He outlawed the law of the Most High. Seeing the Jews as a threat to his kingdom, his actions were strikingly inconsistent with the attitude of tolerance that usually characterized Hellenistic culture. Because he was a goddamn devil, man. He was a straight demon. That's pretty much it. And then it goes into the Maccabean revolt, which it was a good little history on that time frame. Now I got the Book of Maccabees set up. Now before I go there, let me read this real quick, this is the Jewish virtual library, and here it says ancient Jewish history, Hellenism. So right there, just the title alone is telling you that the history of the Jews, you had some Jews that were Hellenized, that adopted the Greek culture. I lost my place, but bear with me, I'll find it. Here he is right here. Right here it says the word Hellenism is also used to indicate more generically the culture and tradition of the Greek-speaking part of the Roman Empire between Augustus and Justinian, and and or the influence of the Greek civilization in Rome, Carthage, India, and other regions which were never part of the empire of Alexander. Finally, Hellenization is used with reference to Judea, Persia, etc., to indicate the penetration of the elements of Greek civilization into territories which, though subject to Greco Macedonian rule for a certain period of time, preserve their natural culture with conspicuous success. So this was something that happened not only to the Jews, but it happened to the other people in that region that Alexander conquered, and then his successors followed. But we're dealing with the Israelites, the Jews, right? A little more. It says the words Hellenism and Hellenistic have a long history in which the text of the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 6, verse 1. I gotta pull it. I gotta get it just to see what it says. Acts 6 and 1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring among the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. I guarantee this word right here is Helen. Let's check it out. Boom. Hellenist. Hellenistes. A Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. There it is right there. From a derivative of Hellen, right? To copy the manners and worship of the Greeks or to use the Greek language. So those are Israelites in Acts the 6th chapter in the first verse. It says, in which the text of the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 6, verse 1, plays a central part because it opposes Hebraio, or Hebrew, to Helleniste, at least from the 16th century onward. This text was interpreted to imply a contrast between Jews who use Hebrew and Jews who use Greek in their synagogue service. Look at that. We didn't put this website together, but the Most High gave us a spirit to get a true understanding. I'm going to read that again. It says, at least from the 16th century onward, this text was interpreted to imply a contrast between Jews who use Hebrew and Jews who use Greek in the synagogue service. And that's all I'm going to read on that. There's more information in there. Lord will, I'll put the links to this one as well as this paper here. I'll put the links in the description box. But going back to the scriptures, now as you just saw, we started here in Acts 17 dealing with Greeks that believed, honorable women and men, a lot of them. And then when you read up in the 4th verse, it tell you in Thessalonica, you had Greeks, a great multitude, of women and men, not a few, that believed. So according to the history and according to the true understanding of the Holy Scriptures, those were Israelites who made Greek their religion, their tongue, their customs, the way they dress, the way they ate, the whole 9 yards. Now to back up those references I read, we have to go to the scriptures. And the first scripture I want to read is first Maccabees chapter 1, which this goes into everything I just read from that paper to the Jewish virtual library. And I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm going to read the first verse and I'm going to jump around. It says, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. Right? This is him taking over these lands and bringing in the customs of the Greeks to those lands and to those people. and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. Now I'm gonna jump around. I'm gonna jump to verse 16. Go to verse 16. It says, now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, we just read about him, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crowns, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Right? And I'm going to jump down. I'm going to jump to verse 29. And I'm going to read down. Actually, no, I'm going to, like, if you in the spirit, you could read the whole chapter and get a better understanding. But let me jump to verse 36. It says, for it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. This is them. They built up the city of David, and they put their own military personnel there, so to speak. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it, and so much that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and become strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Right? And that's when you had Israelites scattered. They were scattering at that time, leaving because of the persecution that was coming upon them. Right? And the point that I want to get to is right here in verse 41 on down. Now, on your own time, you can read the whole chapter, because in the interest of time, I don't want to. It's already been pretty long. But I'm going to just read these last few scriptures to prove that Israel indeed were the Gentiles that have obtained salvation. When you read about salvation to the Gentiles and salvation to the Greeks and the Grecians, those were Israelites. And any other nation that it mentions in the scriptures that's of non-Israelite, that doesn't say Israel, if it says Grecian, Scythians, but they obtain salvation, those are all Israelites. Verse 41 in Maccabees, the first chapter, it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. That's all the heathen that he had conquered. You know, the Persians, the Egyptians, the so-called Egyptians at that time, all the nations round about, they agreed. You know, verse 43, it says, yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profane profanation and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law. Who's the they? The Israelites, and change all the ordinances. You know, that's what happened. To the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances that the Israelites had already in set in order, that the Most High gave them, which was the first covenant, which was the laws. You know, so with that, Lord will, this was edifying to the ears that it needed to hear, that it hit those spirits it needed to hit, to give them some understanding on the Greeks, the Gentiles in the Bible. Because the Greeks in the Bible that obtained salvation and that believed were not the actual Greeks. They were the Hellenized Jews, as we read here. Between Jews who use Hebrew and Jews who use Greek in the synagogue service. So you had Israelites that knew Hebrew and Greek, and you had Israelites that only knew Greek, and you had Israelites that only knew Hebrew. So that's why Paul was set up, as it says in the book of Acts, the 9th chapter, I believe it is, that he was set up for to go and teach the Gentiles, which the Gentiles, as you read in here in Acts 17, were the church in Thessalonica, the church in Philippi, were these churches. Church of Thessalonica, Berea, Philippi, Corinth, you know, right here. There's another good picture. You know, this is the churches Paul was set up to teach, which are all scattered Israelites outside of the land of Israel that were taking on the customs of the land they were in, mainly the Greeks, but you had Israelites in different lands. You know, so this is what it means when you come across salvation has come to the Gentiles. It's talking about the Israelites scattered among these Gentiles. You know, and with that, I didn't want to make it too long, but the Spirit had to go longer than I expected. There was a lot of reading, but hey, Lord will was edifying to those spirits, to the men that were supposed to get it, or women, to get the understanding of what happened to Israel and why salvation has gone out to the Gentiles, because the Gentiles are actually Israelites. And with that, I'm going to say Shalom.